Okay, this one's real quick. Remember we were talking about Chiang Kai-shek in the preceding ones. He's a national. Here, we'll go back. Remember, he is a nationalist party leader who has risen through the military and has taken over. And he took over, remember, by attacking the communists and gaining support from Europe and the United States. But but he does a couple of unintentional things that are going to have a long-term impact for China. They are Mao is now the undisputed leader of the communists. And perhaps even more importantly, Mao is now champion of the peasants. They feel like they've been neglected by the emperors, they've been neglected by the Nationalist Party, and the only person who seems to care about them are the communists and Mao Zedong. Mao is the champion of the peasants. And in a country 90% peasants, that's going to matter. That's going to be really, really important. All right, so global connections. We've got two things we want to address here. Number one, in what ways did the world remain connected and what ways did it become isolated? It was globalization retreated. What I mean by that is there is less connection between the nations of the world, but the world is still connected, primarily through the League of Nations. There's a potential meeting to settle disputes. Not very effective, we've said that. You remember when Italy invades Ethiopia, the League of Nations sends them a nasty letter, and Mussolini just pulls out. It doesn't have much power. And part two of globalization is Hollywood. U.S. movies spread and helped to really spread U.S. culture around the world. Last. But Russia and the United States have become isolated. Remember, the United States is isolated dealing with Europe in foreign policy, but not isolated when it comes to Latin America. We'll look at that more later on. And Russia has become isolated. They've set up, both nations have set up barriers from the rest of the world, that being tariffs. You remember we mentioned tariffs earlier in this chapter. What are tariffs? Think about it. That's right. They're taxes put on goods coming into a country. And part two, Japan has expanded her army. While the U.S. and Russia might be trying to become a little more isolated, Japan is becoming expansionist, imperial power. They want to take over East Asia. And also nationalism has increased pretty much around the world. There are more rivalries with other nations. Remember the map I showed you earlier. Eastern Europe, lots of new nations and rivalries amongst them. Rivalries among Western Europe. Rivalries with the United States and Russia. So nationalism is on its way up in the interwar period. All right, next up will be World War II.